right, so we got 5 o'clock over here. Welcome to today's session on resilience during a pandemic. And today we're really going to focus on human connection and collaboration, which is something that is crucially important. And I know it's been quite a bit of talk in the media about it as well. And there's all kinds of new considerations and things we need to keep in mind as we figure out how do we as humans just stay in touch with each other in a time of social distancing. So this is going to be one of our workshops in a series that we're doing at the moment. So I know many of you are returning and have been to our previous workshops. I know there's a bunch of you that's new. It might be your first workshop. The old ones are in our YouTube channel. So all the recordings are available there if you want to have a look at it afterwards, if you haven't done so already. But yeah, so we're going through each of the 6 domains of resilience, and we've covered so far composure and talked a little bit about an overview before all of this started. And in the future, we're going to be talking about vision, which is about meaning and purpose, reasoning, which is more the critical thinking side of things, and also tenacity, and then your physical health as well in the coming weeks. So yeah, let's get started with this one, and yeah, keep an eye out for the future ones and keep coming along to those. So let's see what's on for today. So as usual, I'm just going to give a quick overview of myself, just so that for all the new people here today, you can just get to know who I am. And it'd also be good to know who you guys are. So especially the people who have joined or haven't joined before, just introduce yourself. So 'cause we'll do a little bit of sharing as we go through. So it'll be good to get to know you and get to know your thoughts as we go through with the different discussions that we do. Then we'll be talking more about connection and collaboration, and we'll look at why should we be connecting with each other. We'll talk a bit about what that means from a neural perspective as well. How does human connection kind of fit in with the brain? And then, as usual, we'll talk a bit about some strategies that you can keep in mind, that you can put into practice, especially in the context of the coronavirus and all the impacts that it has on us as a society. So what are some strategies we can apply right now that is useful for us to keep in mind? So stick around for those. And then at the end, we'll also do a Q&A. So you can ask questions along the way as well. There is a specific question and answer functionality in the settings there somewhere. So over there, you can post a question and I'll make sure that I answer all of those. Or you can post in the chat as well. And I've got a couple of windows going on over here, so I can keep an eye on those as we go through. So as usual, who am I? So I'm Yuri Rosso. Quick little bit about my background. So I've studied a bit of neuroscience, a bit of finance, a bit of organizational psychology, and a bunch of other things. And eventually ended up publishing some research on the neuroscience of resilience, which is really about defining resilience. What are the different aspects of resilience? How do we measure it? How do we build it? How do we remeasure it so we make sure that we're actually doing something that is useful? And resilience, of course, is something that's really important to us because it is a protective factor against depression, anxiety, and a whole lot of other mental health diseases. So being able to improve your resilience is really important as that protection that makes sure that you're living a good life, you're looking after yourself, and that can continue on in the future. So it's a really important skill that anyone can develop. It is something that none of us have by default. It's something that we develop over time, and by putting effort into it, we can develop our resilience as we go. So I've written a couple of books about resilience and wellness as well. The most recent one is called Executive Resilience. So that's available on Amazon. That just goes into the domains of resilience in a lot more detail, and also talks about how resilience is becoming a more important skill as we go into a future that has more uncertainty and more kind of disruptions. And this whole coronavirus incident is something that really highlights that importance as well of the need for human resilience right now. So all of these things are going to put it together into a company called called Driven, actually, which is really an AI-powered virtual coach that is an app that teaches people how to improve resilience, how to look after themselves. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that works later on. So all in all, I'm essentially a resilience expert. That's kind of what it comes down to. And I started all of these workshops essentially as just a way to help people through this time, because that's essentially the purpose of our company: is how do we help people look after themselves and manage difficult situations and tough times and all that. So that's really what we're all about. And these workshops is just another way that we try and make it easy for people, regardless of your circumstances, to learn these strategies, put them into practice, and get through this whole situation and become stronger as a result of it. So now it'd just be useful to get to know you guys as well. So especially if you're new, jump into the chat and just let us know, where are you from? So it's always interesting to see where in the world all of our participants are, and also what brings you here. Is it just something that you're looking for yourself? Maybe you're a coach, you're working with clients, or if you're looking for it from a business perspective. Let us know now in the chat quickly, and yeah, we'll see who have we got on our workshop today. How many people have we got as well? So Belinda from Darwin, great. Well-being coach, nice. Tonya from Australia, Julian from Australia, cool. A couple from Australia, and then Jos, of course, from Netherlands, nice and early. Yeah, and Margaret from Cape Town there. Ida, good to see you again. Graham from Essex, nice. Jeanette from Taree, cool. Lindsay from Driven, woo! Lindsay is one of our people. Anna, cool. Jana from Sydney, business and consumers, nice. Rob from Sydney, good for you from Sydney, nice. Monica from Melbourne, cool. From Oman, Natalia. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna pronounce it again. Fantastic. All right. So now let you guys all know, Kylie, good to see you again. We are establishing a bit of a community over on Reddit, so you can stop by there as well if you want to have a chat with each other or with us. So just go to reddit.com/r/driven. And also make sure you follow us on Instagram @driven. So we're starting to post a whole lot more content over there, and all little bits of things to keep people inspired along the way, and sharing some tips and tricks on resilience. So make sure you follow us there too. And yeah, so why should we connect? So this is an interesting question, because I think a lot of people feel like it's not necessarily that important, or just texting some people is fine. So let's have a bit of a look at this, and here we should talk a little bit about the basic needs. So what are the basic needs? So these are needs that have been established through quite a lot of research in psychology, through different researchers such as Bowlby and Epstein and others. So what they've essentially found over time is that there are a couple of basic needs where, if these needs are fulfilled, that is when we feel a sense of, yeah, our life has meaning. We've got good self-esteem, we've got well-being essentially, and these needs are really interesting. And actually, in the next session, we're going to be talking quite a bit more about what do these needs actually mean, and what are all the different versions of them. Because today we're just going to talk about one of them, which is attachment, which is really the need for human connection. So if these needs are not met in some kind of way, that is where all kinds of maladaptive behavior comes out, which is essentially where we struggle to interact with the environment or with other people effectively, and there could be mental health issues that come out because of these needs not being met. So they're really, really important for us to have these, and that's why they're called basic needs. Is that these are the really basic things that the brain needs for us to feel like, okay, things are working. I feel good. I want to live, and I want to grow and learn and go through life. So attachment, which is our need to connect with people and to connect meaningfully with people, is really the first need that forms. So this is, as a baby, as you're born, essentially, in that first couple of years, that is where a whole lot of connections starting to form in the brain, which is geared towards effectively connecting with people and connecting with your parents initially, forming that kind of bond, forming a secure connection that that essentially means that you feel safe with people, you feel that you can trust people, and you learn how to interact with people in a meaningful way. So this is something that's been really hardwired into the brain over a long line of evolution, because as a society we've essentially developed and kind of superseded or grown past other species because of our ability to effectively communicate with each other, to effectively connect, and that has given us an advantage over other species. So that's been that attachment, that connection is essentially an evolutionary advantage that we've developed, because that's allowed us to build societies, is build really complex structures where so many people play so many little different parts that all comes together in us being able to have these amazing lives that we have, and have all this technology and all these things and electricity and food and everything else that just kind of works. So that's all because of that really basic need for connection that allows us to trust people and allows society to form. So in short, having those kind of connections is really, really important. So, and this is not really a thing about introverts and extroverts. So extroverts, might want to connect with a lot of people very frequently, while introverts might want to connect less frequently, but they still want meaningful connections with maybe just a smaller number of people. So it's not a case of introverts don't really need connection at all. They still need it just as much. It's just more focused on fewer people potentially. So everyone essentially needs connection, and this is something that we really need to recognize within ourselves, is that, yeah, this is something that is important. Even if I don't necessarily recognize that it's important, I need to recognize it. It's not always intuitive that, this is something that I need to keep in mind. And that goes the same for the other needs as well that we'll talk about next week, because it's really within those basic needs that we can find our balance in life. Because if those needs are met through various different ways, then we feel like we have a balance. And if we don't have them, then it feels like something is off. But often we don't really know what is off because we don't really know what those needs are. So yeah, in Driven itself, we also talk a lot more about those and explain them in more detail. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's for next time. So let's talk a little bit more about just us being social beings and why is this important, and especially what's going on in the brain. So I find this really interesting, is just to consider the actual structures in the brain that enables us to connect. So that's really interesting, is that we've so evolved for that need of connection that there are dedicated structures that are formed in the brain that is just focused on connecting with people. So, for example, the fusiform gyrus. So these are two gyri that are kind of a bit lower in the brain around here. So you can see they're sitting down there towards the lower side of the brain. And essentially, these are dedicated structures that are looking to recognize expressions and recognizing faces. So here we're on a very subconscious level trying to pick up from people, what might you be feeling? What emotion are you conveying at the moment? What's going on in your head? So how can I understand you? And that's a fusiform gyrus that is like constantly processing that. So in our previous workshop, we talked about how the signals come in, through your eyes, from what you see, going up into the thalamus, relayed back into the occipital lobe at the back of the brain, where there's a little bit of processing happens. And from there, one of the places those signals go is into the fusiform gyrus, because it's really important for the brain to figure out, who am I talking to? Do I know you? What are you feeling? What are you communicating with me? How can I understand you and meaningfully connect with you? So this is like really important part of the brain to facilitate that connection. And this also connects with mirror neurons. So many of you might have heard of mirror neurons. So these are essentially neurons in the brain where if I'm feeling something or I'm doing something, there are neurons in my brain that that essentially encode, what am I doing and what am I feeling? And what they've found through scans is that there are neurons in the other person looking at you and talking to you that then fire the same as it's firing in your brain, so it also fires in the other person's brain. So that way you can, in a very real way, feel what the other person is feeling. You can start to understand what are they trying to do, what's the goal that they are trying to accomplish, because those neurons are firing in your brain as well. So this was a really interesting finding, and it just kind of shows how deeply the brain is wired to be able to understand people, to have that meaningful connection, and to also form compassion as well. Because that's essentially when you start to understand, yeah, okay, this is what this person's trying to convey. This is their goals. This is what they're feeling. I can understand that, so therefore I can be compassionate with you. I can relate to you, and we can connect. We can help each other. We can form our own little community here. We can form a relationship. So these are very interesting, and neural structures that enable this kind of connection, which should just kind of highlight to you as well that this is something that's really important. We need to connect with people. It's something we need to keep doing. So what does this mean essentially? Well, it means that face-to-face connection is really what activates these kind of structures. So when you're just texting to someone, that means you're not necessarily activating those areas, because the fusiform gyrus isn't activating, the mirror neurons aren't activating. So it makes it a lot harder for us to understand what is this person feeling? What are they trying to communicate? What are their goals? How do I meaningfully connect with someone? So we need that kind of, we need to essentially see each other to be able to see that, yeah, I can understand you, I can be compassionate with you, I can meaningfully connect with you, what you're doing, what your goals are, and we can build a relationship on that. We can build trust on that. So trust is really important, and it's something that really forms from that face-to-face conversation. Which then brings us to an interesting question. What does this mean from, if you get the very biological connection from the brain versus the very technological side that we're starting to leverage now a lot, where we can't really see each other that much. So now we shift towards a lot of digital communication. So I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on this. First of all, going back to the basic needs of the brain, do you recognize for yourself that connection is a key need? Is this something that you feel as well? Or do you kind of feel like, I'm okay, I don't really need to talk that much to people? Curious in your thought about that. And then at the same time, do you feel that you get a similar level of connection through chat and video calls? Curious on your thoughts. So jump in the chat there, let me know what you're thinking. So Kylie says, yeah, absolutely. If I don't have it, I'm not nice to be around. Yeah, it's true. Like for myself, like I really like being around people and talking to people. So isolation is a little bit different. Anyone else? What are your thoughts? Do you feel like you get a decent connection? Ida also prefer personal connection. Yes. John, connection relationships are absolutely essential to teach and help students grow. It's why I do what I do. Yeah, and that's an interesting question, John, is how do you meaningfully connect to students when it's all just a big pile of little screens and everyone's looking at different tabs and things and not necessarily paying attention and all that. Jana, absolutely. Face-to-face is always deeper. Video is okay. Yeah. Kylie, yes. You get it from video. Oh, now you guys are chatting faster than I can read. on the phone. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't really get to be that close to people, and actually even like physical touch is something that is actually really ingrained into the brain as well, is that if it's, if it's someone you trust and you touch in a way that, it fits the relationship, then that's something that conveys a lot of meaning as well. Even if it's just that sense of like, hey, I'm here with you. And it just conveys that sense of trust. So John, personal connection says also things without words. Yes. Jeanette, vital for long-term well-being, must have. Yes. Anna, isolation works for me for a short time. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point too, because it could be fine for a couple of weeks, but then if it becomes a couple of months, it kind of becomes very different. Bernadette, chat and video calls are not the same as being in the same room. Yeah, I tend to agree. I have my own theories there that I think video calls don't necessarily activate those neural structures to the same degree as being in the same room with someone. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later on as we go into it, into the strategies. Fiona, I think making the connection between the neurology and the lived experience is important. We do it all the time. I think we can create a connection via telehealth if we have engagement already. Yeah, I guess definitely better than just a phone call or chat. Arwa. Sam. Margaret, but using technology, people seem even further than they really are. For example, used to kids living all around the world, but in current situation, they seem even further, even though they are no further. Yeah, and I wonder if that's just people being very distracted when they're on video calls too, or using technology. Yeah, so it's interesting. So this is, and this is something that from my side, it took me a little bit of time to recognize as well that human connection is something that I really need to pay attention to, and I really need to prioritize, because it's not always something that's totally intuitive. That especially when you're feel like you're very independent, for example, which I used to do, and then it's like I don't really need to talk to people, but then eventually I realized that yeah, actually I do like being around people and chatting, and then how do you find that connection? And that's where video calls are a bit different from my perspective than actually being in person. So yeah, let's keep going. We can talk more about that. So collaboration. What does it actually mean when we talk about collaboration as a domain? So as I mentioned before, there are the 6 domains of resilience. Collaboration is essentially that one about human connection, building strong support networks, understanding the context of the environment you're in, because how you would communicate with people varies in different contexts. So whether it's at work or at a party or wherever you might be, there are different ways that you communicate to different people, and that's a skill. It's a skill that we develop along with communication skills as well, which is verbal and nonverbal skills. These are things that none of us are really born with amazing communication skills. It's just that some people start to practice those skills a lot earlier, and therefore they seem like they're very talented at talking, or they're just really good at communicating, where really they just started practicing earlier than you have, where you can then at this moment determine, all right, I'm deciding I'm going to work on these skills, and as you develop them, as you practice them, then you become better at it. So that's one of the big things we focus on Driven in the app as well, is teaching these different skills, get you to put it into practice and start to build these skills over time. And that essentially builds new neural structures in the brain. It changes the wiring of the brain itself, so that eventually it becomes more natural for you to communicate and connect more strongly with people and build stronger support networks. Because strong support networks are important, especially when we're talking from a resilience perspective, where sometimes things might, something might happen. We might need that connection with someone. we might need some kind of help. And that's where having a support network that we can rely on gives us that sense of safety. It gives us that sense of confidence that, even if things get really bad, I can talk to someone, I have people I can turn to, they can help me through it. And at the same time, you can help people as well when they're going through tough times. And this is something that we saw in the research is really interesting, because when you help other people, that is really something that increases your own self-esteem. It increases your sense of well-being. Just knowing that, hey, I'm doing something that's valuable here. I'm useful in a way, and it strengthens that connection that you have with people. So one of the interesting things now as well, with it's a big thing with collaboration, is using new kind of tools to connect. We'll talk a little bit about those, and at the end of the day, what it's really about is meaningful human connection. That's really the key here, and maybe that's one of the big purposes of life is to have meaningful connection with other people. Because a lot of what we do, essentially, a lot of our big goals in life still comes back to how are we improving our society, how are we building a better world that we can all live in together. And I think that's again one of those big themes that come through of how important human connection is, because just these individual connections we have with each other, if you scale that up, then there's all these connections that spread all over the place, and all these connections you have with people that you don't even realize, because they're doing things that are enabling you to have the life that you have. And even if it's the people in Woolworths and all the supermarkets, the people in farms and all that, still doing jobs right now so that you can live your life. So you still have a connection with all these different people. So that's where human connection is critically important, and it gives us the lives that we have. So it's at this point that we can talk a little bit about different strategies that we can use right now, given with this environment that we're in, about social isolation and social distancing, all that kind of stuff. So one thing is about new tools. So, and I think a lot of you would have been getting very familiar with a lot of different tools now. Like one of them that I use a lot is Zoom. So it's of course what most of us are on at the moment, which is basically this video conferencing software that allows you to connect with different people, and you can do that through a lot of other different softwares as well, like WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, a whole lot of those ones, where at least you can put a face to it. You can start to see people, and it's just that little bit better than just texting people, where you don't really activate those areas of the brain at all. So the fusiform gyrus and mirror neurons don't really activate at all when you're just texting with someone. So it makes it harder to really understand and have that kind of compassion with people. So one of the challenges here as well that we're starting to see, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens with this over time, is that a lot of these networks are getting a little bit overloaded. And it means that connections, the actual technological connections, are slowing down, and you get delays and things like that, where it just makes it harder then to communicate. When you talk and there's like a second delay before it hits the other person, and then you think they haven't really heard, and you start talking again, and then they start talking over each other, and it's interesting. So I'm hoping that all of these things can kind of be sorted out in the next couple of weeks as all these companies kind of gear up to it. For example, Zoom went from, I think, 20 million members or 20 million people using it to about 200 million people using it in a couple of weeks. So it's all like companies like that are really struggling with it. But it's really important for us to have these kind of things now and to use them quite a bit, so that we maintain that kind of actual face-to-face connection as best as we can. There are other ones coming out as well, like a House Party. Well, it's actually been around for a while, where it's more of the end of one of those apps where it just has a whole bunch of people on at the same time, so you can kind of makes it a little bit easier to talk to a bunch of different people, play games on it with each other, all that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of stuff like that you can start using, and for a lot of people it'll take a little bit of time to help them understand how to use these different technologies, especially if you've got members of the family that's not really used to technology. It is worth the time to help them understand how to use it, help to get them set up so that you can use it more frequently and stay in touch. So that'll be one of my big recommendations, is to take that time, get people on board, and have those kind of face-to-face conversations. Then let's talk about distancing. And here, because this is a big term in the media, is social distancing, which I think, and in talking to quite a few other people as well, think the same thing about this, which is that we should really forget the term social distancing, because really what it's about is about physical distancing, so that we are physically separated from each other, so that we don't we slow the spread of the coronavirus, and that's something really important to try and reduce the load on the hospitals and the medical system. But while we are physically distancing, we really need social closeness. So this is where we as people want to get more connected with each other now than what we were before. We should be putting more effort into trying to connect and trying to stay in touch, whether that's through messaging or voice calls or video calls, and just putting more effort into staying in touch with people, especially when we know there are people who are living by themselves, checking in with them more often, and really taking the time to connect. So that's my a little challenge from me to you guys, is to not really talk about social distancing, but just really talking about physical distancing and social closeness, and really taking the time to connect with people. Now, something a little bit more difficult. This is a couple of things that we need to know, that people will get infected. So essentially, this virus is going to spread a lot. There isn't really anything we can do until vaccines are really widely available, which by the looks of it is only going to be sometime next year. So during that time, even if we do manage to kind of slow things down and we go out a little bit more again, and there's a little bit less distancing going on, then there's still going to be a lot of spread of the virus eventually. We can't really get rid of it. It's just not really possible. So when people do get infected, try not to blame people for that happening, because it's you can try and take every precaution, and just some little thing might have happened, and that's then what caused that person to get infected. So I think it's easy to blame people for, oh, but you didn't do this, so you didn't do that. So try and avoid that, and give people support if that does happen. So most of us will eventually know someone that gets infected with it, or multiple people. So when that happens, be there for them, especially if you're close to them, and avoid blaming, give them support, help them through that period. Another really tough one as well is to recognize that through this, people will die. A lot of people are dying already. And I think in America as well, with the number of deaths that they have right now, coronavirus is the #1 cause of death in the United States right now. And this is a whole lot of people that are dying a whole lot sooner than they would have otherwise. So this is something we need to recognize, is that just about all of us also might have someone or might know someone that might die from coronavirus. So what does that mean? It means we really should take the time to connect with people now. Don't avoid that idea that something like this could happen. So this is essentially something that is important from your own ability to deal with this kind of thing happening, is that if you try to avoid that thought, you're trying to avoid that idea that this is going to happen, you just try to feel like, nah, this is not going to happen to anyone I know. Then if it does happen, then you get a much stronger activation in the limbic brain, which is really what controls the fight or flight response. And if that really strong activation can then create a bit of a traumatic experience for you, and it could be something that could take a really long time to work through. So instead, what we talk about from a resilience perspective is to recognize that, yes, this could happen. And because this can happen, I'm going to spend my time in a way with people so that if it did happen, I'm not going to have regrets about not talking to them or not saying things to them that I wanted to. So that's really a strong bit of advice that I provide, or that I suggest as well, is to connect with people now, make it meaningful, make sure you spend the time with them so that if something did happen, then you won't have regrets, because you spent time with them when you could, you told them the things you wanted to when you could, and that way, we can essentially be there, we can connect with each other, and if something did happen, we can work through it better, and there's less stronger activation. It doesn't take the pain away. Like if someone passes away, it still hurts like hell. Resilience doesn't make you immune to pain, but it does help you to process that situation in a more constructive way so that you can get back to your normal life. You can start to live a full life again afterwards, and you can grow through that experience. As people that pass away, they wouldn't want you to now have a terrible life for the rest of your life. They would want you to still go out and live your life because you're still alive. So that's a bit of a tough one, but it's important to keep in mind. And that's just the reality of the world that we live in now. This is a whole new thing that adds to people and how they're impacted over time. So keep that in mind. Take the time to value people now in your life, and this is one of the big things that resilience is about, is that it's about preparing and looking forward to the things that might happen and taking action in advance before they happen. So another important thing is to have patience with people. So this is another interesting one, because we should know that people will be stressed. People will be worried. It's a tough time for a lot of people to go through now. A lot of people are losing jobs. A lot of people are struggling with finances. A lot of people are getting sick as well. And, all these disruptions that are going on in the world is really tough for a lot of people. And at the same time, we're communicating through technology. So that has its own perils. So this is something important to keep in mind, is that intention and meaning are easily lost through digital communication. So this is important to remember, that someone might have the best of intentions trying to communicate with you, but you can't really see them properly. You can't really, activate those areas of the brain properly to understand and to have that compassion with them. And it can be very easy to misread people and misread their intentions. So take extra care to be patient with people. And something that always helps is to assume that people have the best of intentions. Because it can often feel like, oh, maybe they're kind of angry at me, or maybe they're annoyed at me or something. But really, it's just about, how things came across over a whole lot of compression and things that happened with videos and everything. And by the time, you get to see that person's face in your computer, things are just a little bit distorted, and it doesn't necessarily convey how they're feeling at that time. So it's better to just assume that people have the best intentions, be patient with them, be accepting and understanding of what people say, and at the same time also remember that everyone is dealing with the situation the best that they know how. This is just an unprecedented situation. So many of us are really unprepared for how should we be behaving right now? What should we be doing? What is the right thing? And we're all just kind of trying to do the best that we have, or the best we can with what we know. So keeping these things in mind can just make it quite a bit easier to just not worry as much about what people are saying and how they're saying it, or what did they really mean, and you start to just go into all these kind of mental loops as you try to figure out what did you do wrong or anything like that. So keep that in mind, and also probably with all the things that are happening now, even like things like grudges you might have with family members or something like that, might be a good time to let go of those things and just recognize that, hey, there are bigger things going on. So let's get back to just meaningfully connect with each other, rebuild those relationships, and probably we can all come out of this, and we can be more connected and more compassionate with each other than ever before. So let's have a bit of a discussion with you guys. This is a whole lot of stuff that we talked about. What kind of tools do you guys use to stay in touch at the moment? I'm interested in that. Also, what strategies have been working for you to connect? Which ways have you found that gives you a good feeling of connection? And what do you think you can do to connect more meaningfully to each other that you're not really doing at the moment? So over to you guys. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Curious what you think. Okay. Zoom and Facebook groups. Yeah, Zoom has become a very popular thing very quickly. Just kind of funny, being a whole business related tool. It's suddenly become a very consumer type of thing. More Zoom rooms, Zoo rooms. Okay, interesting. Skype, yeah, good old Skype, still there. Zoom, WhatsApp video, yeah, nice. Yeah. Greg, when I ask, how are you doing? And someone says, good, I laugh and say, come on, give me some. Yeah, good, huh? Thanks a lot. Yeah, especially in this kind of environment, I think a lot of people are not really that good. Yeah, adapting to people's needs or preferences. Yeah, it's useful. Kylie, pick up the phone. WhatsApp. Yeah, cool. And just in terms of actually talking to people, what do you find allows you to build better connection? Like what gives you a better sense of like, yeah, we're actually having a meaningful conversation? Virtual drinks and virtual coffees. Yeah, the virtual coffees and all that, something that we do in our team as well, where we do a virtual lunch where we're all basically just, having lunch together on a video call, and we just talk about whatever. It's not really any kind of formal thing, and people can come and go as they like, which is nice. We still get to actually talk to each other and just share some face-to-face time in a way. And listening to how they cope, not interrupting. Yeah, it's an important communication skill, is actually giving people the time to talk and really listen. Kylie, giving up on coffee, alcohol, or any kind of stimulants to remove the facade and pretense. Interesting. Graham, understanding the other person's perspective helps to get into their psyche. Yeah, and it takes time, especially when you're talking over technology. It's there's, when you're talking to someone, there's often those kind of barriers to connection that you kind of have to break down to really start talking about more important things. So when we're talking through a video, it's like there's an extra barrier that kind of prevents us from just talking about really meaningful stuff. So it's almost like from both you and the other person, you kind of have to keep that in mind, that there's this extra barrier, and we need to put in some extra effort into, let's talk about those slightly deeper things that we might not normally talk about, or we might normally talk about actually in person. So yeah, it's stuff that we need to keep in mind with ourselves, is that we should allow ourselves to talk about important stuff. Simone, spending quality time with my family, those who aren't in constant Zoom meetings. Yeah, it's helpful when you're, actually with people in the same place, but then also, giving each other enough space as well. If you're seeing each other all day long. Dejana, Zoom, phone, uncovering those closest to me, to our individual and shared values, and then together turn those values into standards to build deeper relationships and understandings. Weekly girls' night with my gal pals, find out what someone's actually feeling, listen more than I talk. Yeah, I like it. Good strategies. Anna, using humor, forwarding funny stuff. Yeah, that's something that's I think has skyrocketed a lot, is just the amount of people forwarding memes about Corona and everything that's happening at the moment, which is entertaining. And that kind of humor is really important. It's a very important coping skill, essentially, is being able to deploy humor in a way that doesn't necessarily take away from the seriousness of the situation, but it just allows us to just have a bit of a laugh, relax our brains, relax the impulsive side of the brain and the fight or flight response, and it just makes it a bit easier to cope with everything that's going on. To say that, yeah, it's a serious situation, but we can still laugh, we can still have fun, and we'll still do all the things that we need to do, and that way we can just relax a little bit and keep connecting with each other. Nice. What do people do? What to do when people aren't collaborating? Yeah, Andrew, is an interesting question, because there are definitely people during this kind of situation that that would kind of struggle, because it might well be that they don't necessarily connect that much in a normal situation, and now that they're removed, they're at home by themselves potentially, there's even less reason for them to put in that effort to actually communicate with people. So there it can just take quite a bit more persistence, essentially, to try and connect with them, try and stay in touch, and find a way that they might be more comfortable in talking. Maybe they really don't like doing video calls, and texting them is more their type of thing. So it can take a little bit of time. Just find ways to connect with people on the way that makes sense to them. And it's usually a bit easier to notice, because you might see that there's a bunch of your friends that are staying in touch quite a lot, and there's a couple of people that just really don't. So, and then it's helps for you, maybe to take the initiative there and trying to find some way that makes sense to them, even if it's just forwarding them memes. Maybe that's the kind of way that they like to connect. Yeah, cool. Video chatting makes the situation better, and yes, cool. Emotion, yeah, better and more emotional. Yeah, that helps. That's true. If you can see each other face to face, that is something that really helps. So that's essentially some strategies to keep in mind. I hope there are some useful things that you can take on from this and apply, and just take that extra time to really connect with people, especially because this is going to go on for quite a while still. It might well be a few months. It could be many months still that we will be seeing a lot less of each other face to face in person. And we need to get more comfortable with talking to each other through technology, and then being mindful that communicating through technology doesn't really activate those areas of the brain to the same extent. So we almost need to adjust that consciously in our own brains, that let me make more effort to have compassion with what you're saying, to try and understand what you're trying to tell me, and to understand your emotions around this. And that way we can still form those meaningful connections. It might just take a little bit more effort, a little bit more concentration. So keep that in mind, have patience with people, and and I'm sure that we'll all be learning a lot about how do we really effectively connect to each other in this kind of world that we live in now. So on that note, so a lot of these kind of skills we talk about in a lot more detail in Driven itself. So I'll just talk quickly about this. So Driven essentially is a virtual resilience coach that we've developed to help people build resilient skills. So it starts with an assessment that then goes into a whole training course that teaches you all these different resilient skills. And these resilient skills are essentially like 5-minute daily activities that we take people through just to teach you something about resilience, put it into practice. What does it mean? How do you do it? And how does it help you to improve your own resilience? So one of the things that I use quite a bit in Driven is when something's going wrong or not really the way that I want to, then I can go into it and I can just have a chat with Driven itself, and Driven will just help me figure out what's a good way to think through the situation that I'm in now and how can I work through that. So this also allows me to track my mood and track my improvement over time. And this kind of follows from a scientifically validated resilience test that it starts with. So you can see, what are your strengths right now? Where are areas that you can improve? So that's stuff that's really important during this whole pandemic situation that we're facing now, where if we can work on those areas, especially when we've got a bit more time to work on these things at home, then improving all those areas gives us better abilities to manage this whole situation, get through it, and grow through the adversity that we face right now. So we've got a whole lot of skills and things in there across all these different domains that we'll be talking about each week through these workshops. So if you'd like, you can dive in there and you can check it out. There's also little quick techniques that you can use if something's happened, you need something to help you right now, you can dive in there and it'll just give you some step-by-step guidance on how to work through the situation. And it's all scientifically proven. So we've published research around this that shows that if you use this, it improves resilience by about 25% over a couple of months, and that really protects against depression, protects against anxiety, and it just helps you live a life that's more meaningful. And even in this case that we're talking about now, building better connection with people and more meaningful friendships and relationships. So it's on the App Store. You can basically just find it by searching for the Driven Resilience app. And of course, remember we've got the community on Reddit you can join. You can join us on Instagram too, @Driven. And next week, we've got vision that we'll be talking about. So this is going to be about your sense of meaning and purpose. That's been affected for a lot of people through this pandemic, essentially, with what's happening with jobs and not being able to go out and do our hobbies and all those kind of things. So that's going to be a big topic for next time, including going through those basic needs of the brain in more detail. So highly recommend that one. Vision is the most important domain of resilience, because if you have that sense of meaning and purpose, everything kind of falls into place. So we'll talk about that one then. So I'll send out emails to that. So make sure you check in and to register for that workshop when it comes out. And now we can do a quick Q&A. So any questions you might have, I'll stick around, and you can throw them into the question and answer section over there or into the chat. I see a couple of you have raised your hand, so you can just type it in there and I'll answer it. For those of you that are all done, feel free to drop off, and I'll see you guys next week. So cool, Belinda. Cheers, Andrew. Have a good one. And John's driven purely for adults, or can young people use it? So we do use it with students from 14-year-olds and up. You can go a bit below that as well, as long as you provide a bit more guidance along the way to help them understand. But from about 14 years, that's when we see people who really understand the content and they can use it. So absolutely. Kylie, thanks. Rula, thanks for stopping by. Joss, does mirror neurons building work also between humans and non-humans? I think to some extent, especially with the more domesticated animals that we have, where we can read them a little bit more and understand a little bit more about what they might be feeling. Because there are so much similarities between brains from the higher animals and ourselves. So yeah, no, I think that there's still one of those things that helps us to connect with our pets as well. Graham, thanks. John, fantastic. Jean, Jeanette, fantastic. Yeah, cool. Graham, thank you. Any other questions? Allison has driven a monthly subscription. Yes, it is. Yeah, so you can give that a try. Happy for you to get in touch as well if you've got any questions around that. You can email us at info@hellodriven.com if you'd like to know anything. Cool. All right, we'll wait a little bit longer, see if anyone's got any more questions. Okay, cool. Jana, great. Yeah, happy Easter for you as well. I keep forgetting it's public holiday tomorrow, huh? All right. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Allison. Great. Actually, kind of finishing on time for a change. All right. Cool. I think that's about it. I was interested to hear that the government announced a resilience sector that will kick off in the next few months. Yeah, so they hired a new New South Wales well, that was in New South Wales, New South Wales Resilience Commissioner or something like that. Yeah, which is, all kinds of different concepts of resilience, which is very much on the operational side. So I'm hoping they start to understand or take seriously the idea of people resilience as well, and just the resilience of people that form up the society that we're in, because that's really important in terms of just how do people react in this kind of environment. And especially when we see things like panic buying and all that, if we can improve resilience at a broader scale, then it makes people more rational when these kind of things happen. So yeah. All right, fantastic. I think that's good for the evening. So thank you all very much. Oh, hello, Josh, got another question. Did you offer the Driven app to school kids as a trial? Because that would be good value for personal growth starting in puberty. Yes. So we did use it at a school a little while ago with a lot of kids that were 14 years old. And they saw quite a strong improvement in resilience throughout that period. So that was over a year that they used it. And the school eventually actually made time for them each day to do those short daily activities. So we now have a couple of larger school districts in the US that are starting to roll this out to their students as well, which I think is really important, because the earlier we can teach people these skills, then the more of an impact it can have down the track. Because if these are skills that you can start to apply earlier, it just helps you to manage those ups and downs in life just a lot better. And to a large extent, it's also the skills and the tool that I wish that I had all that time ago when I was at school. So it's one of the big reasons why I'm developing it in the first place. Nathalia, why do we believe life will not go back to normal again with human touch? Yeah, good question. It's like from the perspective of the virus, essentially, like as I was saying earlier, until we have a vaccine and it's broadly available, it's just going to remain one of those things that we might be spreading the virus unintentionally just by doing what we normally used to. And one of the big challenges there of the coronavirus is that you can have it but not show any symptoms, so you're spreading it without realizing that you're spreading it. So, and that's where it might take another year or so before we can say that, okay, now we've properly dealt with this, everyone's vaccinated, now we can kind of go back to our normal lives, what it used to be. So it could be, it could just take quite a while, and hopefully not much else or no new viruses pop up along the way. But it's one of those things that's almost just a matter of time before it happens again. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the world evolves through this and how we adapt. But yeah, it's 6:01. I think we can end it over there. So thanks very much again for joining. I'll post a recording of this afterwards if you wanted to send it to anyone. And I'll be posting up the new workshop for next week very soon. So register for that one, come along, and hope to see you all there again next time. Have a great Easter. Bye.